Welcome back to Fireside Giants, a featured podcast by Empire Sports Media. I'm your host, Alexander Wilson, and my co-host, Anthony Rivardo. Give us a follow on Twitter if you haven't already, Alex Wilson ESM, Anthony_Rivardo. Make sure to smash that subscribe button on YouTube and leave us a good review on iTunes. We always appreciate your support. I might sound optimistic right now, but I can assure you my heart is in a dark place after the embarrassing loss on Sunday to the San Francisco 49ers. And we're going to dive into pretty much what we saw during that game, what went wrong, what went right, if you can even... There was only two things that went right, and I'll note on those later. Quite embarrassing, if I might add. And kind of where we go from here. What's the deal with Dave Gettleman? What are we thinking? What are the fans thinking? And this process entirely. But before we dive into all that good stuff, Anthony, how are you doing, my friend?
You know, a little depressed like every Giants fan. 0-3 once again. Here we are talking about the draft in September. It sucks. It's very disappointing, but it's become the norm now, and I just can't wait for 1 year when it's no longer the norm and we start winning again.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at our records to start the season for the past few years, and dating back to 2016, that was the only year in the last 5 years that we've actually started the season not going 0-2. So 4 straight seasons of going 0-2. And now we're 0-3 this year. Where do you go from here? That's the big question. We're going to talk about it. I really want to talk about the game that we saw yesterday, or rather the CFL varsity versus JV practice squad Giants game we watched yesterday. Essentially, we saw our team gear up to face off an injury-riddled San Francisco 49ers squad. And they were missing Jimmy Garoppolo, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, D Ford, Solomon Thomas, who else are they missing? Nick Bosa, Richard Sherman, Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, and I think a few of their back-end cornerbacks too. They had 2 injuries during the game, Jordan Reed and Mosley, their third-string cornerback. We were playing a team composed of reserve and practice squad guys, with the exception of Fred Warner and a few other starters, but what we watched yesterday was maybe the most embarrassing display of an NFL team I've seen in years. And we've watched the Browns play, we've watched the Jaguars play, we've watched Miami play, and we've never seen this much of a lopsided score with a team that fought the first 2 weeks of the season. Pittsburgh, Chicago, both put up good performances against the Giants, but the Giants stayed in the game. They had a chance to win at the end, and they let things get away from them. The time of possession was a really bad problem. The Giants only had about 10 minutes of offense, and the rest of it went to San Francisco. Their defense was gas. I mean, like, you can blame the defense on the Giants as much as you want, but if you don't give them time to breathe, you're going to get gashed eventually. They're just rotating guys in, and the Giants don't have the depth to keep up when your defense is on the field for that long. Did you see what you wanted to see from Joe Judge, though, is my question. He's the big piece in this, the big new piece, at least. Just to start with him, then we'll go on to Jason Garrett and Patrick Graham and what we saw from them. But from an overall standpoint from that game, I mean, did you see anything that Joe Judge could have done better?
Well, I just want to throw a few things out there before I talk specifically about Joe Judge. Firstly, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I actually think the defense played a pretty good game. I think, they couldn't get off the field on third down, and that was the reason for the bad time of possession differential. And that was disappointing, but I feel like they overall did play pretty solid. They got them into a lot of third and longs. They just couldn't get them. They couldn't stop them on third down. It was ridiculous. But in the second half, they were just winded. They were on the field all day, playing football all day. The offense didn't give them any breaks. So to me, I'm not really going to blame this loss on the defense. And another thing I'll say is the 49ers, I think really what we saw yesterday was a battle of one of the best coaches in the NFL versus a rookie head coach who had a terrible COVID-ridden offseason. So this is where I'll talk about Joe Judge. Like, I've been saying we need to be patient with Joe Judge. Those first 4 weeks are tough, and it's kind of like preseason in a way, and it's like, as long as we're seeing improvement is what I've always been saying, but that's the problem, is we're not seeing the improvement, and that's why I think it's time to start getting a little bit concerned about the current state of this football team. Like I always said, I didn't expect us to win those first 2 games. I didn't expect to win the third game until I saw all the injuries, and I did. But I definitely thought that I would see week-to-week improvement, and so far we haven't seen that. I feel like our best game of the season really was in week 1. I know we were closest to winning in week 2, but I feel like we played the best in week 1. I thought we saw a lot out of Daniel Jones that week, and then we saw a little less of him in week 2. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, this week 3 performance against the 49ers, it might have been the worst game of his career. It was an atrocity. It was pathetic. It was really, really bad. And it really, I hate to do it, but yeah, we've been putting it off. Maybe now we have the Trevor Lawrence discussion on this podcast. I really don't want to do it because I still think it's too soon, but it's not too soon. Like, there's a lot of people having that conversation, and for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 sides to the equation. Before we get into that, I want to just kind of continue with the breakdown of this game. Daniel Jones looked so bad yesterday that he's forcing us to have that conversation today. You know, that's how disappointing his performance was. Good quarterbacks can carry a team. We saw it with Aaron Rodgers. We saw it with many different quarterbacks. But it also comes down to schematics and play calling. Jason Garrett did an absolute terrible job of calling plays yesterday. The one time they tried to get a little fun and exciting, Evan Ingram drops a pitch play, and I watched it like 100 times to see the angles and how this all went down. If you're considered a receiving tight end in the NFL, you have to catch a ball that hits you in the hands. And I know, Anthony, you've been saying this for the past couple weeks now. I don't think the guy ever learned how to catch a pass, how to catch a football.
Well,
it's a disaster.
I just think it's kind of ironic because in our last podcast episode when we were talking with Chris the Entertainer, we were literally talking about Evan Ingram and the dropping problem, and I mentioned how he catches the football and why it's the wrong way to catch a football and why it leads to so many drops. And then in this game, like, we literally talked about that 3 days ago. The next day, we saw it happen. We saw him try to clap a football and drop it because that's not how you catch a football. You learn that in elementary school. That's football 101 is how to catch a football. I don't understand why it's still a problem, and I think equal blame on Jones, equal blame on Ingram. It's catchable. He should catch it and run with it, but it wasn't a good pitch. You know, it was a little high. It was an awkward, all of his body and momentum is moving one way, and he's got to reach back here for the pitch. Like, that does make it difficult, Jones needs to give him a better pitch, but at the same time, it clearly hit both of his hands. He needs to catch that and run with it. Right. So, I don't know. I'd say equal blame for both of them, maybe a little bit more for Ingram, though, just because it's been a consistent problem for him. He does not know how to catch a football. Right.
Well, we know that's a fact, and it's just disappointing because I'm trying to figure out how they practice this during, they practice on a daily basis, and then it comes to the game, and they completely fall apart. They just can't replicate what they do in practice in the game. And stuff as easy as pitching it. It all comes down to timing. Evan Ingram looked like he was way far ahead of the ball. I don't know what it was. But Daniel Jones, the pitch wasn't great. He simply just couldn't hold on to it, and it becomes a fumble. They lose it. And then just to build off of Daniel Jones's mistakes, the interception he threw was one of the worst-looking passes I've seen this season. He threw it directly to an opposing defender. Like, there was not even an attempt at a possible catch for his wide receiver. It was right to his guy. And the pass protection wasn't awful at times yesterday. We saw Nick Mullins throwing off his back foot with guys in his face making completed passes. And we're talking Nick Mullins, not Daniel Jones. And I saw a chart today that even said yesterday's game, or rather Sunday's game if you're listening to this during the week, was the worst game accuracy-wise of his entire career. So it just kind of gives you an idea of he was off on all marks yesterday. And before the game, I actually tweeted out the keys to beating the 49ers. I listed, I don't want to toot my own horn here because they were all spot on. I said, win the turnover battle, collapse the pocket on Nick Mullins, establish the run, be creative on offense, and start fast. They did absolutely none of those things. And we got wiped. Yeah. And look, it's easier said than done. I'll admit that. It's easier said than done. But some of these things are should be baked into every game plan. Being creative on offense should be a necessity, especially in modern day NFL when offenses are so passing oriented. You have to be more creative. Collapsing the pocket on Nick Mullins would just be more creative blitzes. Establish the run. We only ran the ball 10 times yesterday. For how many yards, Anthony? Tell me how many yards we ran for.
I don't even know it off the top of my head, but it had to be less than 20 yards.
17 yards we ran for.
It's definitely less than 20, 17. It was atrocious, and I think the last key that you mentioned is the key. The creative play calling is non-existent in this offense.
Nope.
Now, I just... Because, I'll admit when I'm wrong, right? This offseason, we hired Jason Garrett, and I was like, you know what? I'm happy about this. I think that he hasn't called plays in a long time, but he's been coaching one of the best offenses in the NFL for the past 10 years with the Cowboys, right? Like, they've had one of the best offenses over the last 10 years. You can't really deny that. They've been top 10 pretty much every year except 1 or 2 years when Romo was hurt, right? But I mean, just for him to come in here and be like, it's so vanilla, this offense. It is vanilla. They do not push the ball down the field. There is no pre-snap motion. There is nothing going on prior to the snap. They're barely shifting. It is just, I mean, it's literally you line up and you run the play. That's it. There's no adjustments. There's no, like, the pre-snap motion needs to be here. That needs to be in this offense. It needs to be in every offense in a 2020 NFL offensive scheme. Look at the 49ers. Look at the way that they ran the ball on us, the way that they threw the ball on us. Look at the way they just torched us. Why do you think they were doing that? Because they had all this pre-snap motion. We were talking about the defense being tired. It's not just about them being on the field the whole game. It's also got to do with the fact that even when they're not running a play, they're running around before the play. Like, it tires the defense out. It confuses them. It causes mistakes. And it just gives you a matchup advantage when you have a player going in motion and moving another defender out of the way. I mean, here's the thing. Daniel Jones, when he lines up there, yeah, as much credit as we want to give him for being a smart quarterback and being able to read defenses, like that interception, maybe he thought that it was man coverage and it was zone, or maybe he thought it was zone and it was man. I haven't watched the film on it yet, so I can't really say. But you know what would have helped him distinguish that? If there was a man in motion before the snap. If nobody follows that man, he already knows it's zone coverage. Maybe he knows don't throw it there. If there wasn't a man, you know what I mean? If there was a man in motion, he knows it's man, maybe it is there.
Right.
Just help your quarterback out, Jason Garrett. Help him. Like, he's just not, I don't know. I can't believe how vanilla this offense is, especially in the running game. It is atrocious, and I just can't imagine that Jason Garrett actually stays on this coaching staff longer than a year if this continues.
When it comes to Jason Garrett, in my opinion, we saw some creativity in week 1, right? We saw him get the ball to Saquon Barkley on that awesome screenplay, and he ran it for like 38 yards, and he hopped over 2 defenders. We saw some creativity, and then he just completely went away from it. I don't understand, like, if you watch the Chiefs play, if you watch even Dallas, if you watch Green Bay, we see all of these really, really interesting looks and, like you said, pre-snap motions to figure out if they're playing zone, figure out if they're playing man. And it just doesn't seem to me that Daniel Jones is seeing the coverage that well at all. Like, Eli Manning, the reason why Eli Manning was so good for so long was because he could stand at the line of scrimmage and pick apart every single player, what they were going to do. He could make adjustments at the line of scrimmage and audible to actually change the play and actually have more success because the defense was showing what they were going to do. Daniel Jones doesn't have that experience yet. He doesn't have the talent yet to do that. And the reason Eli Manning failed was because of the same reason that Daniel Jones is failing right now, or at least one of the factors. The offensive line is a disaster still. They're ranked 32nd in pass protection through 3 weeks. 32nd.
Yeah.
With, like, I think it was a 45 overall rating for PFF. Like, just tell me.
Pull it up.
Just tell me how it is that we spend a first round pick, 4th overall pick on Andrew Thomas. We put Nick Gates at center. We signed Cam Fleming. We retained Will Hernandez, Kevin Zeitler. And we
hired Mark Colombo.
We hired Mark Colombo, who's supposed to be like a guru, and this unit actually got worse. How is
I'll
it possible?
throw it out there. I think we still have to cut some slack to Nick Gates because he's been going up against really good competition and he's never played the position before. So let's cut some slack to him. But let's look at Will Hernandez. We need to have a Will Hernandez conversation.
Yeah, we do.
That conversation needs to happen first. Will Hernandez is not good. He has not been good since his rookie year. Last year, he was bad. This year, he's been really bad. Like, what is going on with Will Hernandez? The guy should be so much better than he is. He has all of the traits. He's so strong. He's actually pretty quick. Like, he should be much better than he is, and I don't understand why he's just not putting it together.
He got tossed around by
gets
Javon
tossed
Kinlaw.
around. Kinlaw tossed him around. Kinlaw's a very talented player, sure,
But
but like, Hernandez just isn't holding his own. And here's the the stats that you were talking about. 2019, Jones was pressured 41.9% of the time, which was tied for first. 2020, through 3 games, he's been pressured 41.5% of the time, which is the third worst. So that means zero improvement in that department through 3 weeks this season. The Giants' 46.3 pass block grade ranks 32nd, dead last in the league. Daniel Jones is under pressure on over 40% of his dropbacks. That is not sustainable. You cannot win games when you're under pressure that often.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And the problem is that I don't think Daniel Jones is capable of extending plays on an every play basis like a Russell Wilson can, or even Aaron Rodgers, who can just fling the ball like 40 yards perfectly downfield and get away with having a bad right tackle or a bad center. You know what I mean? It just...
I think Jones can make plays like that, like obviously not consistently because he's in his second year. He hasn't even played 16 games, and he's not Aaron Rodgers like he's Daniel Jones.
Right.
But I think he can make plays like that. But another thing I'll throw out there are no opportunities for plays like that. The receivers aren't that good. They're not separating. I was looking at the next-gen stats. They're getting no separation. But on top of that, how about the fact that maybe nobody's even running routes 20 yards down the field?
That too.
Like Jason Garrett is just putting everybody like right in front of him. He's trying to make Daniel Jones this check-down monster. Daniel Jones is not a check-down quarterback. Like Daniel Jones actually thrives when he's ripping the ball deep down the middle of the field. That is where he thrives. Down the middle of the field, throwing the ball 20-plus yards. He's really good at that, and he's got to be another thing. This offense, this Jason Garrett offense, I can really go on for like an hour about this alone. Where is the emphasis on play action? Like when we run play action, we see increased success. So why aren't we running play action more often? Like you can run play action like every single play, and it doesn't matter whether you establish the run or not. Play action still improves your passing lanes because of the run fits. Like that is 101. Like I said, I could go on for an hour about this Jason Garrett offense, but I don't have the headspace for it. I'm really sick and tired of, the struggles on offense. Like, I don't know, man. Total disappointment. I really thought this was going to be a good hiring. Already, I'm ready to move on from Jason Garrett. I've seen enough.
Yeah, I mean, just to note a few more things. Watching the game yesterday, all San Francisco had to do was play cover one and just stack the box because, like you said, the Giants weren't taking any shots downfield. And taking shots downfield opens up the defense. It forces them to actually cover that portion and drop safeties into deep coverage, which then opens up pockets for Daniel Jones and other quarterbacks to throw into. Now, when you don't have that kind of availability and you're keeping everything within 15 yards, you completely condense the field. Literally, Darius Slayton's entire purpose as a wide receiver is to run deep routes. That's it. That's his entire purpose as a wide receiver. And I actually want to see, I don't know, I'm going to pull up the next-gen stats right now to see his...
Dude, shout out next-gen stats.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing, though. From yesterday's game, I'll tell you this. He ran one... So, okay, the Giants threw him 2 passes that were beyond 20 yards downfield. That's it.
I'm looking at his passing chart too right now. My goodness.
They had one like an outside post route to like a boundary route, about 25 yards downfield, and then the other one was like a.
That one was the when they jumped off sides and he just ran a go and Daniel Jones threw him a perfect pass.
That's the one on the right side.
Sideline.
That's the one on the right side.
That's the one on the right side, and it's just funny to me that's where we find our success is when it's off script and Daniel Jones just guns it down the field or throws a dime because he knows he has to. It's like, well, Garrett maybe
take shots,
incorporate that. Let's take some shots out of the field.
Unbelievable. And the second completion that was beyond 20 yards was looked like a post route towards the middle of the field. This is the one he fumbled on late in the game.
Exactly.
But like you said, when we're playing off script and we're taking shots, that's when we're seeing success. It almost seems like Jason Garrett is like doesn't want this team to do well, and he's playing conservative football, check downs to Dion Lewis and Evan Ingram, forcing the ball to Evan Ingram. Can we stop with that already? Like, what is it with your obsession with Evan Ingram? He sucks. He has sucked through 3 weeks. I don't know what to tell you anymore. I don't know what to say. Like, Caden Smith's snap count dropped from about 50%, like 48% last week, to 31% this week. Why the hell is Caden Smith losing reps to Evan Ingram, who can't catch a freaking pitch play? He can't catch in the receiving game. The guy is essentially useless. He can't block. You might as well have Caden Smith and Levine Toilolo out there since the 49ers can apparently gash us with their third-string tight end. Jordan Reed goes out, and they're still throwing it to their tight ends with their backup quarterback, and they're ripping us apart. Like, why is it that we can't replicate that same success? I get, the schematics are a lot better on the San Francisco side of the ball. They have more continuity and more experience, but the reality is that when we're not taking shots downfield, we're limiting our defense. Like, you take that shot downfield, and suddenly, the next few plays, they're worried about that. They have to drop two guys into cover two, deep coverage. That opens up pockets for guys like Golden Tate running across the middle of the field on crossing routes or whatnot, getting balls underneath. You have to get people into space. Jason Garrett's not finding ways. You know how many times I saw our wide receivers get jammed at the line of scrimmage and just sit there and have no separation? Like, when I tell you no separation, I mean they were on top of our wide receivers. Like, it almost looked like it was borderline a penalty, but it was just our wide receivers not fast enough, not aggressive enough, not strong enough, and just sitting there and waiting for things to happen. What can you do when Darius Slayton's the only one open, and they're just like, okay, well, if Golden Tate and Evan Ingram can't get any separation, we're just going to force the ball to Darius Slayton, who's triple covered. And then Daniel Jones is sitting there like, who am I? I've gone through all my progressions. Now what? That's why he was the leading rusher yesterday on Sunday. That's why he was a leading rusher, because he wasn't seeing any separation from his wide receivers, wasn't seeing anything he can work with. And now we're sitting here talking about how Daniel Jones is the leading rusher on the Giants through 3 weeks. And we're trying to figure out, where do we go from here? And that kind of leads us to our next big debate. Dave Gettleman's got to freaking go, man. Am I wrong?
There's no debate. I mean, I wanted Gettleman gone. I never wanted Gettleman in the first place. I thought that was a bad hire, and I wanted him gone last offseason, this offseason, and I want him gone as soon as possible. I always really have. I've always tried to stay optimistic with Gettleman and recognize the positives that he's done. Like, hindsight's always 20/20. I hated the Odell trade when it happened. Now it looks like it was probably a good trade, and was in the best interest of the team. But you can debate that. That's really subjective. I don't think that's an objective thing. And then he's hit on some good draft picks. We'll give him that. Dexter Lawrence was a great pick at 17, and that was a pick that I wasn't crazy about at first until I started watching film, and I was like, yeah, you know what, great pick. Deandre Baker was obviously a bad pick. He's had his hits and misses in the draft. Most of the contracts he's given out in free agency have been bad. I don't even want to bring up number 2 overall in 2018 because I feel like it's such a toxic conversation to have. But to me, ever since Gettleman's got here, he's made a slew of mistakes that he's just been forgiven for. And I'm not exactly sure why. If A, fans forgive him, B, the ownership continues to forgive him. When Shermer was fired, I just think Gettleman should have been fired too. And now we're in an awkward position where, let's say we do fire Gettleman at the end of this offseason. What do you do with Joe Judge there? Like, you can't fire Joe Judge after 1 year, especially not. You can't fire Joe Judge, but how do you find a general manager to come in and Joe Judge has to? You're getting a new boss for Joe Judge. It's like an awkward thing. What if this guy wants to be the general manager of the Giants, but he doesn't want Joe Judge as his head coach? Or what if, like, now you've just opened up this whole slew of controversies within the organization. Like, I don't know. They should have cleaned house last year, to me. And now I just don't know what direction this team is heading in. And I really hope that they don't go the direction of promoting someone from within the building, Kevin Abrams. We need something new. We need something different. I just...
We need someone younger.
Let's fire Gettleman. I don't know.
Gettleman's a dinosaur. He's trying to force power running in a league where passing and using running back screens and doing interesting things, Texas routes. We haven't seen a freaking Texas route with Saquon Barkley in like 3 years. What is it? I don't understand, what it is that the ownership sees in Gettleman that makes them want to retain him for longer and longer. I think it's more of like a boys club thing. Like they're just friends with him, and he's just like, they're similar ages and stuff. They're very like similar mentalities. We want to be ground and pound Giants football. And look, the head coach is going to come in and try and do exactly what they want, because why else? That's just it. Like, Joe Judge isn't calling the offensive or defensive plays. That's Jason Garrett's role. I think the defense is a lot closer to success than the offense is right now. And I thought it was the exact opposite going into this season, right? I don't know if you agree, but like going to the season, the offense I thought was our strongest point. I thought we had Daniel Jones, we have Saquon Barkley, we have a rebuilt offensive line, we have Shepard, Darius Slayton, Golden Tate, Evan Ingram. There's plenty of weapons there to utilize, but now you think about it, and you think about the defense, and so far, this is my most interesting takeaway, though. This is the best part. So far, the two players who have been the best on this team have been the two guys signed during Joe Judge's regimen. Blake Martinez and James Bradbury. There are the two guys who both, and by the way, Blake Martinez was brought on, was signed because of Patrick Graham, not because of Dave Gettleman. He was Patrick Graham's guy. He played with him in Green Bay. That was a complete connection signing, and look how well he's done. Now James Bradbury, on the other hand, that's where you might be able to connect to Dave Gettleman because that's a Carolina Panthers connection there, and Bradbury's been excellent for us. But again, how can you sit here and not mention the fact that our best players right now all occurred during Joe Judge's regimen, not Pat Shurmur's regimen, not Ben McAdoo's. You know what I mean? So now we're going into let's fast forward to 2021. We have Xavier McKinney back. We have Blake Martinez still. We have James Bradbury. We go out, we get a number 2 corner, and now we're in good shape. Our defensive line is solid. Our interior defensive line. Maybe we draft a pass rusher in the second round or something. We get a good guy. I don't know who it would be, but look, we're not that far from having a very, very talented defense. Offensively, our offensive line is still garbage. Our wide receivers can't get any separation. And the malpractice, by the way, of not drafting a wide receiver this year is looking like a major mistake. And a wide receiver class that was so deep, we completely disregarded the position entirely.
Well, I gotta say, like, the two signings, the Bradbury and the Martinez signings, I think everybody who's been listening to this podcast for a while knows that I was not a fan of the Martinez signing because he's not a coverage linebacker, and I thought we needed a coverage linebacker, not a run-stuffing inside linebacker. I'll say this. He has been dominant as a run-stuffing inside linebacker. He hasn't dropped it back in coverage much, and That's a good thing. That is the scheme. Mm-hmm. Now, had it been James Betcher's scheme, he would have been in coverage a lot. And we probably wouldn't be the biggest fan of the signing because he'd be getting torched in coverage all the time. But because of Patrick Graham, you mentioned it, that was a connection signing, and Patrick Graham did an excellent, excellent job of building this defense to fit Blake Martinez's strengths. And so Martinez just goes in there, he shoots the gaps, and he makes plays and run defense. And he's not asked to do a whole lot in coverage. And that is perfect to me. I think that is that's a job well done by Patrick Graham. That's a positive we could take. But you look at the offensive side of the ball, you do not see that. You don't see there was a player specifically this scheme was built around. You didn't see it with Saquon Barkley. It didn't look like the scheme was built around him. Nope. I mean, they weren't doing anything creative with him. They were just lining him up in the backfield and giving him dives up the middle.
Alvin
and then, yeah, right? Look at how the Saints use him. Look at how the Panthers use McCaffrey. Look at how look at how the 49ers use their fourth string running backs.
Exactly.
Like, look at that. It's the scheme. I'm gonna keep preaching it. I think there's a lot of talent on this team. I think a lot of it is young and it hasn't fully realized its potential, but there is talent on this team that's just not being utilized right by the offensive scheme. The defensive scheme is good. That's where we lack the talent. Actually, that's where we lack talent at cornerback too. Isaac Yiadom, Corey Valentine, whoever you want to mention out there. I'm happy we saw a little more Logan Ryan this week though, because he played. Yeah. He had some nice plays, but just on offense, this scheme is really the crux of this team. It is the problem. This is by far the problem. I mean, you just look at the way Saquon Barkley was running up the middle on every single play, and now Devontae Freeman is running up the middle. Like, just, I don't know, man. It's so frustrating because, and another thing, Evan Ingram, and I'm actually going to mention this because you tweeted before we went on the podcast for some questions from fans. Somebody asked us, this is Ty at _DeekTy_, who do you and I want gone at the trade deadline, and what should they do? I'm going to throw out here, and I've always been against this. You've always been the one who said trade Evan Ingram, and I've always been the guy who's like, no, let's trade him. You know what? At this point, no one knows how to use him. Shurmur didn't know how to use him. McAdoo did actually know how to use him, which is kind of weird. Shurmur didn't know how to use him. Jason Garrett doesn't know how to use him. He drops passes. He can't block, mainly because they're not putting him in position to succeed, but Like I said, they don't know how to use him. A team that knows how to use him will value him.
Oh, he'll be
the
amazing.
Packers, the Patriots. Someone will value this kid, and he will go on to have a great career, but it's not going to happen in New York. I promise you that. They don't know how to use him. They don't know what they're doing with him.
He has no confidence.
And he doesn't even have ties to Gettleman. If Gettleman wants to actually, set us up for the future, despite the fact that he's not going to be here, he should trade Evan Ingram. He doesn't fit in this offensive scheme, apparently, even though we thought he really would. And you can probably get a second or third round pick. I don't think you're getting a first, but you're definitely getting a third and maybe a second. So at this point, I'm off the Evan Ingram hype train. I've seen enough. I've held out hope for too long. I just don't see things turning around. I think it's time to do it.
Look, here's the reality. This team is not close to being successful. We need to gain as much capital as humanly possible over the next.
And we're already down. We're already down 2 picks. A 5th round pick and a 7th round pick have already been traded away by Dave Gettleman. Yep. So malpractice is a word that you used earlier. Throw it out there again. Malpractice.
Yep. So he's already skimming us of all of our assets. It looks like we're going to have the greatest asset of all, the number 1 overall pick. Now, if he pulls the same bullshit as he did with Saquon Barkley, I'm not listening to offers. I will lose my mind. Okay? I will lose my mind if he decides we're at number 1 and he's going to say, we're taking the next running back, screw Trevor Lawrence. That's some shit that Dave Gettleman would do. But listen to me. Listen. We have to be smarter with the draft. And we're going to have a top 5 pick. It's pretty much written in the stars at this point. It might not be number 1, but we're going to have a top 5 pick. And if Dave Gettleman is there calling the shots next year, we are screwed again. We can't trust him anymore. They can't expect us to keep staying patient for 3 years now. Look, I can stay patient for Joe Judge. I can do that. But the problem is, this is the 3rd time they're asking us to stay patient and wait for things to happen. It doesn't take this long to rebuild a team. Look at the Arizona Cardinals. Look at the 49ers. There's no continuity. I think Joe Judge is the guy. I don't blame that last loss on Joe Judge as much as I do Jason Garrett.
I don't either.
As much as I do, it really was the offensive's fault, and I really blame Daniel Jones a good amount for that game because he looked awful and he didn't take any shots. He sat in the pocket for too long. He threw a bad interception. He threw a bad pitch play to Evan Ingram that should have been caught, but Mr. Feet for Hands can't catch anything. Look,
feet for hands.
We have a lot of talent. We just can't put it together. And look, it comes down to coaching. It really does. And confidence in this team. If you saw them after the game, they looked depressed. They looked very, very, very scared for the future. They did not look like a team that's ready to win. And where do you go from here? They should have shaken things up last year. They didn't. Now's the time. The Giants don't normally cut general managers mid-season. I don't think they will this time around, but I think Gettleman is gone the second the clock hits 12 o'clock at the end of this year for the Giants. Because they're already out of the playoffs and it's week 4 next week. That's the point.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't see any way that you can justify keeping Dave Gettleman around longer than this season. They probably won't do it mid-season. If they do, it'll be towards the end of the season.
Retire
I think
thing.
Jerry Reese made it through 12 games before he got fired in 2017. The last 4 games, he was gone. But I'll just say it has to happen. There's no way around it now. There's a lot of people who are fans of Gettleman, but you just can't continue.
That.
You can't. A lot of people really are. I noticed that because today when I made my anti-Gettleman tweets, I got 100 likes and a lot of retweets, and I'm like, there's no way that my followers, right? They've all changed their minds. It's actually interesting to see the way that losing just makes everybody change their minds. And I agree. Let's be patient for Joe Judge. Let's even be patient for Daniel Jones. This season isn't over. He's got a long time to start playing better. He played really poorly this week, but I definitely still think it's too soon to be saying. And another thing is, a lot of fans like to throw out hope, and I'll throw out a little bit of hope, even though I don't believe in it. I think it's false hope. When you look at this division and you see that the leader of the division right now is 1-2, mm-hmm. and there's a team that has 0 wins but isn't in last place, the Eagles, because they just tied. Yeah, you can look at that and say there's hope for us. We could still make a playoff run because our division's so bad. It's that's false hope. You don't want that even. You don't even want to get to the top of this terrible division
There's none.
and just get bumped out in the first round of the playoffs, and then you're a mediocre team with a mediocre draft pick, but you're really a very poorly run like roster. You've got no talent, and you just slid into the playoffs as a 7th seed or whatever, and that is like a nightmare. I would rather it implode, we get a top 5 pick, and we can have some more draft capital and look towards the future. You don't want to be one of those teams in the middle with a crappy pick where you can't get the top tier guy that you want, but you're also not far back enough to have like good trade value. It's just, you don't want to be in the middle settling for an average organization. That's how you become the Cowboys. So to me, I don't know. I've lost hope. The false hope, I don't want to hear it anymore. I think every year we're 0-2, and then people are like, when we won the Super Bowl in 2008, we started 0-2. This is not the same team. This team does not have Michael Strahan on it.
Nope.
It doesn't have Eli Manning in his 5th season on it. It doesn't have Justin Tuck. It doesn't have Osi Umenyiora.
Even JPP.
It's not the same team. You can't. It doesn't have 2 Pro Bowl and 1 All-Pro offensive linemen on it. That doesn't exist on this team. So, it doesn't even have. Jeremy Shockey didn't play in that Super Bowl, but going into that season, he was on it. He was on that team. And Jeremy Shockey is like arguably, like, you could make the argument he's a fringe Hall of Fame player. He's definitely one of the best tight ends to ever play for the Giants. So just the false hope. I hate to be the dream killer. The Giants, this is not a playoff team. I never thought that they were. I didn't think that they were this bad, though. And this is a really big wake-up call. I think it should be for fans to realize there is a top-to-bottom problem here. There's one constant from all the head coaches, and that there is a management and ownership problem that needs to get resolved by the end of this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, how else can you describe it but that you have to go to the top of the food chain for something that's lasting this long? They've gone through 3 head coaches up to this point, and there's still no change. We're going backward. It just has to be a personnel thing, and the general manager is in primary charge of that. Our cap situation is not bad right now. It really isn't. We've gotten rid of all those dead cap players. We have Leonard Williams on a 1-year deal. Half of our team is on 1-year deals. That's a bad sign, might I add. When you have half of your guys, your starting players on 1-year deals, that shows you that you're just trying to fill spots for the future. We're just patchwork team right now. And look, okay, Anthony, and if you're listening to this, check it out on YouTube, because we're going to have it up on the YouTube channel at around this mark. I'm looking at Alvin Kamara's next-gen stats right now. And I'm looking at his route tree. Pull this up. If you haven't seen this from week 3 against the Saints on Sunday night, go look at Alvin Kamara's route tree and tell me that they couldn't do the same thing with Saquon Barkley. And tell me that they couldn't get a running back who can take some slack off of him, who can just run downhill like Latavius Murray. Just run downhill, pick up a few yards, and then use Saquon Barkley as a primary pass-catching back who scores, 139 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in a game. If Saquon Barkley could do that, I would be totally fine paying him. The Giants are misusing Saquon Barkley. They're trying to force him into a scheme that does not fit his play style. Alvin Kamara and Saquon Barkley can be equally as good. Barkley is just as good at breaking tackles, just as fast, way stronger than Kamara. If they used him even remotely in the same way as they did Alvin Kamara, he would be a Pro Bowl, all-pro player. Are you seeing?
Did you see that Texas route for a touchdown on this route chart?
Oh yeah.
Texas route for a touchdown. You just mentioned earlier how there's no Texas routes run by the Giants offense.
Oh yeah.
I see one distinct Texas route for a touchdown on Kamara's chart. Actually, this chart is kind of blowing my mind right now. I can't believe.
I've been looking at this right now for 10 minutes now, just while you've been talking, and I'm actually sitting here how the hell are? And go look at Saquon Barkley's chart, and you're gonna sit there is Jason Garrett drunk? Is he on meth on the sidelines? How can you not utilize a talent like Saquon Barkley in a way just to even get positive yardage? If he's not working in the running game, he's going to beat any linebacker that you match up against him. Any linebacker in the NFL, there's nobody that can stick on Saquon Barkley. Get him the ball in space, make him a better pass catcher. Instead of running him up the gut on 3rd and 1 or 1st down and 10 every single time. It just doesn't make sense to me anymore. Look what they're doing with Alvin Kamara. Please, if you're listening, go check out his route tree. It's going to blow your mind, and you're going to realize that it's a lot about our play calling that's putting this team in a bad spot. Our play calling is a disaster compared to other teams in the league that put up 30 points or more every single game. We're skirting the edge of vanilla bean at this point.
Vanilla bean. Good ice cream flavor, not a good offensive scheme, though. I gotta say, that's my review of the Vanilla Bean offensive scheme. But yeah, you know what? You're right. Like, the scheme has been holding back Saquon Barkley. I know I did that film breakdown video, and I don't know if I've ever actually said this. The preparation that I did for that Saquon Barkley film breakdown for this YouTube channel, that I did it. I watched, and this is the preparation I did. I watched every single rushing attempt from Saquon Barkley in 2019, which took me a very long time. Put in a lot of dedication and work for this channel because we love you guys.
Yep.
But that was kind of hell. I'm not going to lie, that got really boring after a while to just watch him take these dives up the middle. And the conclusion that I came to is Saquon Barkley is a phenomenal player. There's flaws in his game. His vision isn't the best. His pass blocking isn't good at all. And occasional drops here and there, whatever. But what's been holding Saquon Barkley back more than anything is the offensive line and the offensive scheme. The offensive scheme was the number one thing that I put, not the offensive line, because the offensive line, I thought, yeah, they played really poorly, and especially in that game against the Jets where he had 13 rushing attempts on 1 yard, which was just an atrocity.
Their defense
was
terrible too.
If you watch that game, yeah, the offensive line was horrific, but watch the game against the Dolphins and watch the game against the Redskins, or the Washington football team, my apologies. The offensive line was the same. It was the same players out there. They weren't blocking necessarily better, but the scheme was noticeably improved. They ran pre-snap motion at like a much higher rate in those games, and it found much higher rate of success. And that's what I've been arguing this whole offseason, and that's why I was excited for Jason Garrett, because in Dallas, they were running a lot of pre-snap motion. So I said, this is how the Giants offense is going to benefit. This increased rate of pre-snap motion is going to lead to an improved running game. But now we haven't seen any of that. Nothing that he did in Dallas has carried over. And that, to me, is really bewildering, confusing, and disappointing, because I thought Pat Shurmur's scheme held back Barkley and held back the Giants offense in general. And now I was hoping that would change under Garrett. But for some reason, somehow, I feel like he's actually holding it back even further. And that is just so demoralizing as a Giants fan. Like, that is killer. And I just can't understand how does that even happen? How does it go from bad to worse? And I feel like this isn't the first time it's happened for us.
It's not. It's happening on a weekly basis now that things take steps backwards. When you take a step forward, you can't take 5 steps back, and that's what we've seen from the Giants. And right now I'm looking at Saquon Barkley's from last year, some of his route running trees via Next Gen Stats, and what I'm seeing from this is a lot more of the same. He only catches maybe on average 4 receptions per game, and Alvin Kamara is catching 13. When Michael Thomas goes out, when Sterling Shepard goes out, get your ball to your best players. It's not freaking rocket science. Like 17 carries, 59 yards. That's unacceptable even for Saquon Barkley. 14 carries, 28 yards. If your running game isn't working, you have to open up your offense in other ways. Get your best player, Saquon Barkley, into space in the receiving game. Play action, ins, outs, drags, slants, Texas routes. Even run him on wheel routes up the sideline. I don't care. But what we have to do is you have to get another running back to help Saquon Barkley, because at this point you're just running him into the ground. You're tiring him out, and then you're increasing his probability of getting injured. People have to be scared of Saquon Barkley, but if they have no other weapons to draw things away, if they're not using him in creative ways and keeping him healthy and ready to go, like if you watch even Green Bay last night, if you watch Green Bay at all, you'll see that they take Aaron Jones out. They put Jamal Williams in for 2 or 3 plays to give Aaron Jones some rest, and then they do creative things with Jones when he's in the game. Good teams utilize 2 running backs. And that also plays into the factor that maybe you don't need to invest the 2nd overall pick in a running back, because you really need two talented running backs with 2 different styles of play to have success in the NFL at that position. Because right now it's all about creativity, and the Giants are running the same plays they were in 1980. What are you going to do?
You know what you need to have success at the running back position? Everything except for a running back.
Literally.
That's why when people say running backs don't matter, that's why. Because what you need is a good offensive scheme and a good offensive line, and probably having a good quarterback helps that too. What you don't need is a running back who breaks an abundance of tackles. Why? Because if he has a good offensive line, he doesn't have to break so many tackles, and he doesn't have to wear his body down. And if you have a good offensive scheme, you're already opening up holes for him to just run through. And it's weird because people might not understand where I'm coming from. We just watched the San Francisco 49ers trot out their fourth-string running back. And I know Jerick McKinnon is a good player, but he's their fourth-string running back. We just saw it. All you need is a good offensive scheme and a good offensive line, and that's what they have. And you can run the ball efficiently with whoever you have in the backfield and against whatever defense you want. That's all you need. You don't need a superstar running back. That's why as much as I love Saquon Barkley, A, as a person, B, as a player, and C, as a New York Giant, it's not necessary to have an extremely good running back. You can better allocate your resources elsewhere. And it's such a toxic conversation, like I said earlier, so I don't really want to have that running back at number 2 overall conversation. Maybe if we have a certain member of the Twitter community on again, we'll have the conversation again. I'm sure he'll shove it down our throats. Will receipts. He knows we're talking about him. Then we can have that conversation again. But, man, I just got to say the direction of this football team is, like I said, concerning. And I think, like I said, look at the 49ers. You see the way Kyle Shanahan schemes together an offense, and you see the pre-snap motion being used at such a high rate, and you see how much success a player like Nick Mullins can have in that offense. Dude, it's Nick Mullins. How do you get blown out by Nick Mullins? Because of his well-coached offensive scheme. That's what it is. He hasn't played in a while, and he just comes off the bench, and he's already looking like he looks like he might be just as good as Jimmy Garoppolo in that offense. Because of the offense. It's the scheme. Put Nick Mullins in the scheme with the Giants, you're going to say, yeah, this guy has no chance. He is awful, whatever. And maybe even, you look at Nick Mullins and you say, he makes some really good throws. Like, he could start on a team. It's like, yeah, he could start on a team. He could start on a team with a good offensive coach and a good offensive line. The Giants don't have either of those things. And when you see Daniel Jones struggle, that's why. And when you see other teams with worse quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks come in, even the Bears, man. Look at the Bears. Matt Nagy is like a very good offensive mind.
Mitchell Trubisky.
Nick Foles steps in. He's a backup quarterback.
Exactly.
Trubisky misses the reads, whatever, but there are games where Trubisky looks like a competent quarterback and finds success. The running game is usually solid over there too, but Nick Foles just steps in, backup quarterback. The offensive scheme fits his playing style, and he'll just start dropping bombs and dropping dimes. Like, that's the thing, man. The offensive scheme, it is going to be the crux of this team until pre-snap motion. It's time to modernize the scheme and become an NFL team.
And I think, but I think that goes back to Dave Gettleman's mentality of power running.
Without a doubt,
it goes back to power running inside the tackles. Not getting creative. No pre-snap motions. We want to run it down their throat for 60 minutes. Joe Judge says at his press conference meeting in the beginning. That's a reflection of management. He's in line with management. Joe Judge will change. I have no doubt about that. All he wants to do is have a successful team. I guarantee you he does not enjoy being 0-3 right now. And he's not calling the offensive plays. But look, just to give you some perspective, I was watching the Saints game last night. And I keep going back to the Saints because they're kind of like just how they utilize their players is really, really appealing to me. The commentator goes, the Saints, man, their offense isn't even at full octane. They're not clicking right now. They're really just using the meat and potatoes of their scheme. Now, let me tell you something. They scored 34 points in week 1, 24 points in week 2, and 30 points in week 3. Now, let me tell you something else. Let me tell you how many points the Giants scored in the first 3 weeks of the season. Let's see here. 16 points in week 1, 13 points in week 2, and 9 points in week 3. And we're going to sit here and say we are even close to success. We are maybe miles away.
I got to throw the statistic out there. Do you know how many snaps the Giants had in the red zone yesterday?
0.
Or on Sunday? 0. How is that possible? That is atrocious, man. That is so bad. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even believe that. I did because I watched the game and I was like, holy shit. Like, that's true. Yeah. But you read that and you're like, 0 snaps in the red zone. If you didn't watch that game, you would be like, how? Like, that can't actually be possible for a football team to do
Another
that.
good fact. San Francisco didn't punt once. And here's another thing. The defense held them to 3 consecutive field goals, hoping, praying that the offense could do something. And you know who the best 2 players in the field were for the Giants? Their kicker, Graham Gano, and their punter, Riley Dixon. That's all I got for you.
Oh, Riley Dixon dropped a bomb, dude.
Yeah, right the
he had a
5-yard
good
line.
punt. That was the most exciting play of the game for the Giants. When Riley Dixon kicked that bomb, I was like, holy cow, how did he? Whatever, man.
Be the icing on top of the
special
cake.
Special teams, though. Joe Judge, special teams.
Exactly. Special teams looks great.
Icing,
The
icing on the cake. Let's hear it.
Matt Dodge coming back to screw this team up even more. That would maybe convince John Mara to freaking fire Dave Gettleman.
You did not just say that name.
No, it's supposed to be like a sabotage thing. Like we just convinced Dave.
We don't say that name around here, boss.
We convinced Dave Gettleman to re-sign the Dodge Ram, and he gets him, and then he eventually gets Gettleman fired, and that's the last straw. We just got to find anything. We're gonna have to we have to rent a plane and fly it over MetLife at this point with a flag like the Jets fans do. I don't know what to do, man. I have no answers. But here's what I will say before we log off here. I'm gonna give my 5-point plan to fixing this team, and you can do the same if you want afterwards. So,
Sure.
Number one in the 5 points: fire Dave Gettleman and hire a younger general manager with some idea of what a modern NFL team is supposed to look like. To get more creative on offense, more pre-snap motions, more screen passes to your best players, more receiving for Saquon Barkley, less running. 3, get another running back to complement Saquon Barkley because we have him for another year, if not at least 2 more years. Get another running back who can run downhill and take some of the wear and tear off his body. 3, get a wide receiver that can get separation. I'd like to see that. Wouldn't you like to see that? I don't know, someone that can actually get open in the passing game. Number 5.
Yes, I'd like that.
Number 5. Get a second quarterback, a cornerback. I'm tired of seeing Isaac Yiadom and Corey Ballantyne. They essentially benched him on Sunday, and we still got rocked anyway. Maybe he's our good luck charm to a degree. But, that's kind of where I'm looking at right now. And here, actually, I'm going to add one more to it. Trade away any assets that we have right now that can bring value to this team before we have to give them away, a.k.a. Janoris Jenkins. What the hell was that? Gettleman, every single fan was like, dude, trade Janoris Jenkins. He does not want to be on this team. He does not care. He's a good player, and now he's starting for the Saints. I mean, he didn't have the best game on Sunday, but look, we could have gotten a 3rd-round pick for him. That's a 3rd-round pick that you could get a good wide receiver. They could have drafted Chase Claypool there by trading Janoris Jenkins.
Could have even gotten a 7th-round pick, and it would have been better than nothing.
It would have been better.
It doesn't matter. And you done with your 5 points?
I'm done.
Should I throw mine out there? All right. I know. It's been a long weekend. I don't have a 5-point plan already laid out, but I'll just say firing Gettleman is step 1. Step 2, instill your faith in Joe Judge. Keep him around and just find a general manager that wants to work with him and let them work in tandem. Don't make a long-term commitment to that GM. Make a 3-year commitment because you got, I think, 4 years left on Judge's contract. Give 3-4 years. Make them the same so that if you get one out the door, you get the other out the door. No imbalance. You know what I mean? So that's my idea for the GM. I know Ed Dodds is a good name to throw out there. There's a player personnel, I don't remember his name, with the Titans that I know has a connection to Joe Judge, and apparently there's rumors that they want to work together. So that would be cool. Definitely better than having Gettleman. But, I'm going to throw this one out here only because we're 53 minutes into this podcast, and I don't know how many people are still listening. Step 2 might be to trade Saquon Barkley and devalue the running back position and start to look to make this a more modern offense. That's probably how I would go about this. Barkley's career is going to be wasted with the Giants. We're not going to be good next year. We're not going to be good 2 years from now. He's not. By the time he's ready and healthy and he's in his prime, we're still not good. So don't waste his career. The running back position, like I've said, is not as important as Dave Gettleman thinks it is. So maybe just give Barkley the chance to find success elsewhere because he is a great person who deserves it. He deserves success. He's not going to get it here. That's controversial. I love Saquon Barkley. I have his jersey. Wore it yesterday. Was super disappointed because now I got to wash it. I do a weird thing. If we win, I don't wash my jerseys. Every time we lose, I wash my jerseys. So I do a lot of laundry lately because we lose a lot.
Anthony. God damn it.
Yeah, and then step 3, let's get rid of Jason Garrett probably. Make a new, younger offensive mind who can put pre-snap motion in there. And I'll just give those 3-point steps. Fix the offensive scheme. I agree with you. Trade away valuable assets that we're wasting. Evan Ingram is another one. You can honestly maybe throw Sterling Shepard's name into that mix.
Would definitely throw Sterling Shepard's name into that mix.
I'm the guy who wants to keep Shepard around. I've talked to a few people who are like, yeah, let's trade him. So throw him in there. Obviously, get rid of the old veterans that are taking up a ton of cap space, Golden Tate, Nate Solder. Really, I just think the past 3 years we've had this fake rebuild. Just start over. Cut it from scratch. If you want to keep Daniel Jones as the quarterback because you don't end up with the number 1 overall pick, sure, he's shown enough. You can maybe try and build for him. But really, I just think you gotta start from scratch and let Joe Judge do it his way. I still think that fully the decision to keep Gettleman and then hire a head coach was the wrong one. You should have fired both at the same time. So I don't know. Let's just build this team Joe Judge's way, I guess, and hope that he actually has as much brains as I, the leader of the Joe Judge fan club, gives him credit for having.
Well, that's all we got for you guys today. Plenty of somber thoughts and ideas from Anthony and I, but you know what? We are going to stick through it as we always do. Since we've started Fireside Giants, it's only been bad. I'm not taking blame for that whatsoever. I'm going to blame that all on John Mara. So, with that being said, thank you for listening to Fireside Giants and sticking with us for another week of awful performances by our team that we love so, so much. And quickly fading away into darkness, I will forever be a diehard fan, but it's getting pretty difficult. I kind of just expect to be depressed every Sunday. It's way easier to go into it with low expectations, I must say. I always am a positive person via Twitter. People know that. But behind the scenes, I am very disappointed in this team. And being a New York media market, we deserve better. I always say at least we're not the Jets. And you know what? We pretty much are the Jets right now. So it's pretty sad to say. There's no improvement that we have seen in Week 3 against a team of backups at home in MetLife. They kicked our ass, man. What else can you say? But we'll come back next week. As Joe Judge says, we'll keep working. We got to get better. And that's all we got. So, Anthony, I'll let you give the final remark.
I'll just say, stick with us. You know, the Giants have had their bad moments. They will be back soon. You know, it's hard to be optimistic at this point. It really is. And so, apologies for this very somber and depressing episode, but it had to happen. Like, it's just a somber, depressing moment for us as Giants fans. Like, you know, you guys are Giants fans, and we love and appreciate all the support that you give us. So, we're just trying to say what you're feeling, basically, because we feel the same way, because we love the Giants, too. And it sucks, because for the last 2 years, we've been covering the Giants, and they've been bad the entire time. So, I'll just say, let's just hope, you know, it can't be bad forever. It will turn around eventually. And stay tuned. Film breakdown should be out this week too. I know you guys like those, so
I don't even want to watch that.
Stay tuned. Yeah, it's gonna be an ugly film breakdown, but we're gonna do it for you guys. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a good one, guys.